Hello, this is Rob, and you're listening to North Country History with Rob Berg. Today, in light of recent developments in the northwestern part of the Great Lakes region, in the boundary waters of Minnesota near the border with Ontario, Canada, we are going to talk about the boundary waters and the wildfire, as we like to call them now, that is burning right now in the just north of Ely and Winton, Minnesota, known as the campfire. And this fire, it's not a large fire yet at this point, but it is burning really unchecked and has for the last 9-10 days. And it is currently burning at about 240 acres, adding that much per day. So this is a fire that is not unprecedented by any means, but it is affecting an area that I visited just last year and has been a very popular canoeing, hiking region, not just for Minnesotans, but for people all over the United States who likes to come to the boundary waters to get into the wilderness. So we're going to discuss a little bit about that today, about the boundary waters and about the wildfires that have burned through there and about wildfires in the Great Lakes region in general. So settle in, sit back, and enjoy. North Country History with Rob Berg, your podcast on the forest history of the Great Lakes region. For those of you who have been listening to the podcast for a little while now, you're going to be a little familiar with the area in northern Wisconsin known as the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness. That is part of the Superior National Forest near Ely, Minnesota, and stretching up to the Canadian border, and where it adjoins the Canoe Provincial Park to make it a large canoeing area that straddles both the United States and Canada. And it was dear to the heart of Sigurd Olsen, a native of Ely, who has been a topic of the podcast, and a lover of canoeists from all over the United States and Canada and from elsewhere that have made the Mecca to Ely, to other taken areas, Winton, little town to the east of Ely, down the Fernberg Road to the very end of the road and putting in there to go off into for a wilderness adventure from just a couple of days to weeks that you could go where you can paddle and portage through this wilderness that was not untouched by man, but there's a lot that remained that was never cut. This was an area that was affected by lumber or by the logging in the late 19th, early 20th century, by iron and other mineral exploration and mining in the late 19th and early 20th century as well. And then even plans for hydroelectric power. There was one power dam that was built at Fall Lake, but then with the fight to the concerns of people like Sigurd Olsen and many others, they were able to stop the rest of the Boundary Waters area from being developed for hydroelectric use. But now there are other concerns. There is some concerns about mining in the watershed just north of the Boundary Waters, and also now wildfires. And pardon me with the frog in my throat, but this fire that we're talking about, the campfire, as I mentioned in the introduction, that is occurring at the moment. The smoke has hit southern Michigan, and I was out for a little bit today. Not a lot. I tried to stay inside as much as I could, but I'm already being affected by the smoke, and I was last year when I was up in the region from wildfires that were not in the Boundary Waters area, but were further away, but the smoke was coming down to there even. So pardon the froggy throat while I speak today. I really want to cover the important topic of the boundary waters and wildfires that we're going to be doing here. Before we really get into the program too much, let me give you a little bit of background information on the boundary waters and some of the history of the area and the geography, the area of it. So the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness, part of the Superior National Forest, is 1,090,004 acres, and it extends along 150 miles of the Canadian border. That goes pretty much from almost Lake Superior. The Gunflint Trail comes in and goes into the inland a little bit there and where it begins. And then it goes up going to the north and then to the west to north of Ely and heading up towards the Canadian border to the north there. And if you combine this with the rest of the Superior National Forest, Voyageurs National Park, and in Ontario, Canada, Canoe and La Vérendrye, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, provincial parks, it makes up an international boundary waters area that is about 190, a huge area, huge expanse of land that is mostly wilderness and through there. There is areas that is not considered or is not designated wilderness. Much of the Canadian side is not. So there are motorboats are allowed on some of the waters there. A little bit more development, cottages on what's called crown land along and through there, which is usually governmental land that is not owned by the province or strictly owned by the federal government through like a national park. But I'm probably not giving the correct definition of crown land. Forgive me, my Canadian friends and listeners. But of this 1 million plus acres of land, about 190,000 acres, nearly 20% of it is water. That includes over 1,100 lakes and hundreds of miles of creeks, of streams, of rivers that run through there. So all of this is open and available, maybe not all completely accessible, but is available for canoeing and fishing. And this is kind of the main draw of the Boundary Waters Canoe Area. It's right in the name, Canoe Area. And that's what this was meant to be. This was an area that historically was accessed by canoe, by the native indigenous peoples of both Canada and what would become the United States, and also by the fur traders, trappers who came into the region, going after the wealth of fur from beaver, pine marten, other fur-bearing animals as well. That was very lucrative. That drove both France and Great Britain, the British Empire, to vie for Canada and the Ohio Valley and the Great Lakes regions in the 16 and 1700s here in North America. The remaining 80% of the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness is forest, and it contains the largest remaining uncut forests in the eastern United States. There is a mixture of pine, softwoods that were used in the lumber industry that were lucrative, and some areas were cut, especially in the southern part of the Boundary Waters. Winton was a major logging center, had sawmills on Fall Lake, and railroads that came out that far to be able to move the cut lumber down to Duluth and to Lake Superior and shipped that way, or by rail down to the Twin Cities of Minneapolis, St. Paul, and connecting to other parts of the country from there. Also, it had the mining, as I mentioned, went through there. Ely had iron minings for a period of time, but the Vermilion area to the west of Ely, the Vermilion Range, that had a number of iron mines through the area, some of them still there today. But most of this region was surpassed by the Mesabi Range further south and southwest, including in the cities of Hibbing and Chisholm and in that region of Virginia, of Minnesota, down there, and that's where mining is still, iron mining is still some of the largest areas in the not only the country but in the world for iron mining. But cutting through this area is what's called the Laurentian Divide, and it divides the watersheds of both the Great Lakes, where water flows to the Atlantic Ocean, and then of Hudson's Bay, where the water flows eventually to the Arctic Ocean to the north. And the iron mining and lumber hit the regions in the 19th and early 20th century, as I mentioned, and it developed boom towns in Vermilion, Ely, and Winton, among others. And by the 1920s, these industries were pretty much, not completely dead, but had really declined in the area to where another new industry, tourism, was springing up in its place. And this is where somebody or people like Sigurd Olsen came into play. And Olsen not only was a huge proponent of conservation and of wilderness, but he worked both as a biology teacher, science teacher at the Ely Junior College there in Ely, Minnesota, and then eventually as the dean of the college. And he also worked as a canoe guide in the Boundary Waters, and began to know the Boundary Waters more intimately than most anybody else. And he wrote about the Boundary Waters and the importance of this region, not just for those who lived there, but for the spirit of people in our country in general, the need for wilderness. And he had has had his critics, both, during his contemporary period and today. And he certainly wasn't perfect in his espousal of it. What was practiced in the early 20th century is, considered not good now during the Leave No Trace era of thinking, when you're out in the not just wilderness, but out in nature, out in the wild, as I like to say. But this was areas, or this was very important, springing up of the canoe guides, of the where you came as somebody coming on vacation, trying to get away from everything, either taking the train north, or more commonly, as it grew to more, driving up from the cities, from the Twin Cities, from Chicago, from Milwaukee. Those were probably the areas where most were coming from, because there was no Mackinac Bridge, probably not a lot of people coming from southern Michigan, from the lower peninsula, going to the Boundary Waters. We did have great places in Michigan, though not necessarily to the extent of what the Boundary Waters were. So this was, became a big fight for many to protect. And the Superior National Forest, going back to, was created in, I believe, about 1909 as one of the last acts of Theodore Roosevelt when he was leaving office for the last time as president, just prior to the inauguration of William Howard Taft as his successor as president. he signed in to create a number of national forests in the eastern United States, where prior to Roosevelt and prior to the creation of the U.S. Forest Service in 1905, what national forest reserves we had, which became the National Forest System, were all located in the western United States. And he Gifford Pinchot, his chief of forestry, and Roosevelt and others recognized the need for national forests in the eastern United States as well, especially in areas that had been heavily lumbered, such as in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. And through these three states, beginning in the early 1900s, there were two national forests established in Wisconsin. In Wisconsin, the Chequamegon and Nicolet National Forest. They are now combined together administratively as the Chequamegon-Nicolet National Forest. In Minnesota, there was the Superior National Forest and the Chippewa National Forest. Those two remain as separate national forests today. And in Michigan, what eventually became our system started out with what were initially 5 different national forests, but today exist as 4 or 3, depending on how you count. In the Lower Peninsula, there was what was first known as the Michigan National Forest, and then was changed to the Huron National Forest. And then that was also one of the early ones in the early 1900s, along with the Manistee National Forest, created by Theodore Roosevelt's cousin, Franklin Roosevelt, in the 1930s. And together they're now the Huron-Manistee National Forest. And in the Upper Peninsula, there was the Marquette National Forest in the very eastern Upper Peninsula, the Hiawatha National Forest in more of the central Upper Peninsula, and the Ottawa National Forest in the western Upper Peninsula. But at some point, I don't know the dates on it, the Hiawatha and Marquette National Forests were combined into just being known as the Hiawatha National Forest. So that's 4 or 3 national forests in Michigan. But I've gotten off the subject of the Superior and the Boundary Waters, so let me bring it back. But all of these had the same mission to kind of restore the forests in the Great Lakes region. And they've all became very popular for not just as lumber reserves, areas where there would be lumber for logging, for forestry, but also as places for recreation, for hunting, for fishing, for camping, for hiking, and bird watching, and everything in between. Mountain biking is very popular now. The North Country Trail, National Scenic Trail, stretches through a number of these national forests. The only one that it does not hit is the Huron National Forest in the Lower Peninsula of Michigan. So this is, recreation is a very important part of it. And that's what the Boundary Waters canoe area was created for, was to help protect this area for recreation. Again, also to fight industry going in there, the hydroelectric dams, and now where they're fighting for, I think it's a copper nickel mine that they want to develop nearby. But what it's hard for them to do is be able to prevent fires. Fires can be either natural causing, usually from lightning strikes, or they can be man-made, either accidentally or on purpose. And the accidental ones can be from errant campfires that have been left burning, or somebody thought it was out, but it was only smoldering, and it took just the right conditions, very dry, very low humidity, and strong winds, and that gets kicked up into a little bit of a larger fire, and if that's not taken care of, it can get away from you, and it becomes a major conflagration, burning such as some of the great wildfires that we've had through the region. During the late 19th century, early 20th century, railroads were a very common cause of fires. And actually, even into the 21st century in Grayling, Michigan, when I lived there, there was a fire that was caused by sparks from a bad, poorly maintained railroad tracks when a train went over. And sparks between the wheels, the steel wheels and the steel rails, and it caught dry brush on fire. And that spread into a large wildfire that burned for a few days and put the small city of Grayling in danger. Thankfully, it burned out prior to, or they got it under control before it could get into town. But that wasn't always the case. Another way that fires could get out of hand is that after the lumber period, you clear the land and you want to get it ready for homesteading, for farming. And the best way to clear that land, especially after it's been been on fire, logged, is you need to get rid of the slash, all that extra litter on the ground there from the stumps, the small trees that were not economical to be cut. I know I've talked about all this before, but it's always important to recap. And then also the branches. Best way to do that, you pile them all up and you burn them, and pretty much like a big bonfire. And usually it all gets burned out and you're fine. But, if you're burning it at the wrong time, low humidity, high temperatures, doesn't necessarily even need to have high temperatures, but a warm enough day, and with winds, and it being dry. This is very dry wood on the ground, along with brown needles. You know how well those burn. That it can get away from you again very quickly, and it can burn and burn and burn, and that happens as well commonly. You can think of, and not always does it happen right away. In 1990, there was a fire west of Grayling. I'm going to talk about Grayling, Michigan, because that's where I lived for 18 years. And this is not Minnesota, but it's the same thing happens there, happens in Wisconsin, happens in Ontario, and wherever wildfires occur. But in 1990, in Grayling, there was a fire known as the Stephan Bridge Fire. And the Stephan Bridge Fire started out on private property where somebody was clearing land, getting ready to build. I don't know if they were going to build a home or cabin or something or other. And it was in March. And they had bulldozed and trees down and cut trees. And they were burning them while it was cold, while there was snow on the ground, in good, safe conditions. And they burned a lot of it, got rid of it. Well, then what they did is that they then, with bulldozers, they bulldozed dirt and earth up over and around where the fire had been, where there was ashes, where there was still, unbeknownst to them, smoldering wood that was still on fire, but you could not see flame. And but that got buried, and it took the oxygen out of there, but maybe leaving just enough to still allow that to burn. But it did not catch. It did not have enough air for it to catch and to take off. And that was in March. And more snow came and covered it and everything, and you'd think it would have been fine. But spring comes, April, it warms up, everything dries, melts, but evaporates. And it happened a lot there, and it happens in the North Country where the ground is mostly sand and where there's the pines, and you get these hot early spring days, and everything melts so fast with the heat that warms up so fast. Instead of being able to soak in the ground, it just evaporates right back up into the sky, into the clouds. And the ground is parched. And in the springtime in the North Country, it can get windy. And so winds kicked up, and it just fanned those that smoldering wood that was there in that wood pile that was still hot, that was still burning very slowly. And that introduction of more oxygen there just fanned it. And the fire just kind of popped up again and just started burning. And it took off, and this was an area of jack pines. And anybody familiar with jack pines, it's nicknamed fire pine. and it burns and it burns and it burns. And you really need it. Jack pines need fire because that's how their cones open up in the heat of them, so they're allowed to regenerate. So that fire burned through quite a bit of area in Grayling in Crawford County, Michigan, in the Lower Peninsula. But that's exactly what's happening here in the campfire in the Boundary Waters. My understanding is that the fire began from lightning strikes. But people, I've been following along on social media and on news accounts, and there was a major storm that went through around June 26th. And the fire did not start until July 7th. So you're looking at about 11 days, give or take, about 2 weeks almost, of when the storm hit and when the fire burned. And I'm not boots on the ground up there. I'm down here in southeast Michigan. But having been up there and knowing what the forest is like there, again, there's a lot of jack pine. It's a lot of sandy soils up there, even though there's a lot of water, the lakes, the rivers. But it's been very dry. We have a heat dome that is sitting over on top of the Great Lakes right now, making it very hot and very dry, very low humidity compared to what we normally get in this part of the country. Instead of 80% humidity that we get sometimes, we're having 40%, 50% humidity, which is very low for the Great Lakes region. It's been very dry, and this storm that happened, there were lightning, there were strong winds, there was hail, and so it not only had lightning strikes that could cause things to catch on fire, but you also had a lot of dead timber that probably was dead standing timber that fell, that came down. And so when that fire finally ignited, it's probably smoldered for several days. But then when it finally ignited, there was a lot of fuel around to burn. And there's been a lot of fuel in the Boundary Waters area for really the last 25, 26, 27 years, going back to in 1999, there was the derecho that hit the Boundary Waters area and really the upper Great Lakes with 100-mile-plus winds that came blowing through the area and knocking down a large number of areas through there. And it led to various fires after they had all of this, 370 prescribed burns to reduce forest fire fuel over the time period. It hit millions of acres, is what the 100-mile winds here. I should have been looking at my notes first. But yeah, it's the derecho, Dericho, July 4th, 1999. And it hit both the upper Great Lakes region, upper Midwest. I had friends who were out in, that was a different one that hit in the Iowa through Illinois. That was later. So this was a major windstorm that came through. And so they ended up doing prescribed burns to reduce the forest fuel loads. About 370 of them they did over a period of time after that. And that helped a lot, but there was still a lot on the ground. And so there were wildfires that hit in the region in 2005, in 2006, 2007. That one was 76,000 acres. That was at the time the largest recorded wildfire in Minnesota. The ones in the 19th century didn't get recorded officially, so they don't count them. But of the modern period, usually from about the 1910s on, is when modern fire protection started in the United States. 2011, the fire of 92,000 acres, and then another fire in 2021. So the current campfire, as I mentioned, is at 2,150 acres, and it's expanding at 239 acres per day. And it's really has hit a lot of areas there. And just a few days ago, on July 14th, the or I think it was July 13th, they announced it, but taking effect on July 14th, the Superior National Forest, the U.S. Forest Service, has completely closed the Boundary Waters Canoe area wilderness, and rangers have gone in and have been having, clearing out canoeists, hikers, to make sure they get to safety. And they can contact many of them, thankfully, with satellite phones and improved cell coverage. They could reach many of them directly, and also a lot of them were seeing the smoke and realized we have to get out of here. So they were meeting them on the lakes, on the portages, and making sure that they get to safety. The road that goes east from Winton, the Fernberg Road, that is not wilderness area. It's developed, not developed like towns, but there are camps. There are numerous put-ins for to get into the Boundary Waters. There are cottages and cabins in through there, outfitters. And they've had to evacuate that entire area. And you have fires that are not jumping lakes yet, but they are burning around the lakes, jumping rivers and streams. And it's a very dangerous area. And to put it in historical comparison, the major fires that took place in the Great Lakes region really have burned in the same way. And we're looking at places such as Peshtigo, Wisconsin in October 1871, which led to one of the deadliest fires in the history of the United States. Over 1,000 people perished in and around the village, the town of Peshtigo in northeastern Wisconsin. The next day, the Great Michigan Fire on October 9th, 1871, burned. Stories used to be that ash blew across Lake Michigan, or hot sparks did, and ignited fires in Michigan. It cannot be proven one way or another that happened or didn't happen, but because there were small fires burning for quite a while in Michigan, it was all the same weather system, hot, dry air, high winds, and it just blew a lot of these fires together, and it led to a fire that eventually reached about 2 million acres. So it's one of the largest fires in the history of the United States for wildfires. And both of those were in October 1871. Another one at the same time was the Great Chicago Fire, and that led to the same, or as I said, the same time, but for the most expensive fire in damages. In Minnesota, the Hinckley Fire in September 1894. That's always been considered the worst fire in Minnesota history, and it destroyed a number of towns, Hinckley and other surrounding towns in that area, a lot of loss of life. And then in Ontario, we jump into the middle 20th century, the Mississauga Fire in May 1948, north of Lake Huron. Started around in the Mississauga River Provincial Park area and the Chapleau area of Crown Lands in northern, or kind of the Algoma region of Ontario, and affected a lot of that area. And so that is considered the largest fire in Ontario history. And all of these fires are the same. They start with something happening, and it may not happen right away. And you can look at it like what you have with a campfire. We all sit around a campfire, and our favorite part of it is when there's all the flames and everything. So we are always adding fuel to the fire and adding air to it, so we have the nice flames and we can roast our marshmallows around them and everything. Of course, a wildfire, you don't want to do that. But that's what we think of with the fires. But if you don't keep it up, don't keep adding fuel to it, the fire burns down. And eventually you don't see many flames in there. But, late in the evening, there's only one or two of you left sitting around the fire. Everybody else has gone to bed in the cabin or in tents, however you're camping. And there's the last few of them, and it's darker in there now because there's no flames to illuminate anything. But you can see all of those coals all down in what you think is ash, but it's really the coals and some still burning pieces of wood. But they all have bright orange on there of where, and you can hear it crackling, and you can sometimes see a flame catch and burn for a minute or two, but then it kind of dies out because there's not, the air isn't being fanned. There's not a lot of fuel for it to burn, but it is still maintaining that heat. It is still maintaining that fire in there. But if you add another piece of fuel to it and you blow on that to kind of fan those flames, what happens? It all catches up again. And that's what likely happened with the campfire up in the Boundary Waters area. So it is important to be careful when you're out with the fires there. And, this was a natural fire, but people are saying, oh, well, how can it have been from lightning? Lightning, they didn't have any rainstorms, any thunder and lightning there at the time when the fire started. Well, no, but they did, 10, 11 days beforehand, when there was a severe storm through there, and it probably smoldered like that. This is something that happens out in the forest. And, you hear people say, well, this is why we have to log our forests more, because we have to get rid of all of that fuel. Well, except that when you log, you not only, take out a lot of those, tend to be fire-resistant trees, a lot of your older, bigger, more mature trees that have a thick bark that, yes, they're going to scar. And sometimes they're going to burn severely, but the fire won't burn so high up that it'll reach as a crown fire. Yes, that happens sometimes, but that's when there is a lot of fuel on the forest floor. And a lot of that fuel is left from when there had been other logging that took place that doesn't get cleared very easily. That's what happened in the post lumber industry era in the Great Lakes region. Now they do a much better job, and they do clear a lot of that out to where it's not fire hazards. But you do have the issues in wilderness areas and other areas where it's closed to logging, and you will get a lot of that natural debris on the forest floor. A lot of it decays, but a lot of it stays there. And it is still important to the forest because part of a forest is not just the trees, but it's also the rest of the wildlife in there. People, love to see the wildlife when they're out hiking in the woods. You like to see deer. You like to see squirrels, raccoons, maybe, bear. Some people are afraid of bear, but a lot of people want to see bear when they're out in the forest. Bobcat, if you're up in Minnesota, you're going to maybe not likely see lynx, but you have a better chance than anywhere else to see lynx. There's pine marten. That is a great animal of our northern forests, and fishers and porcupine. And you have snowshoe hares and cottontail rabbits. And, of course, squirrels. I think I already mentioned squirrels. So you have all of this wildlife here. Oh, and, of course, the birds, woodpeckers. You have owls. You have eagles, hawks. Many of them, both of the birds and of the mammals, they live in tree cavities. They live in hollowed out trees. The woodpeckers, they will feed off of dead and dying trees, looking for the insects that get into them. You don't usually have the insects in a healthy tree, but you will in trees that are injured, trees that are dead, they're dying. And so they're going to carve out those holes. They're getting those grubs, those larvae in there. And then those are perfect areas for smaller mammals, smaller birds that they can use as habitat as well. So having some of that dead and dying timber in the forest is still very important. But we do also have a lot of invasive species now too, including a lot of insects that do not have a lot of natural predators here in North America, that they have come from other parts of the world or other parts of the North American continent that have spread from various things. And there are going to be people hearing me, and when I say this, and they're going to go, oh, he just talked about climate change. There's no climate change. Well, there is climate change. There's, call it global warming, call it climate change, but our climate is changing. And there is a spread, a migration of different types of wildlife, of vegetation, of insects, of birds, of mammals from different parts of the continent to other parts of the continent where they didn't naturally naturally live at before. And that's happening with a lot of insects that were originally from the forests in the West, in the Western Rockies, and they've spread up through the Northern Rockies and jumped across through the Great Plains in the Western United States and Western Canada, and are making it towards the Great Lakes region. So you have, after these fires and after major wind and ice storms like what we had in Michigan and the northern lower peninsula in spring of 2025, that there's a lot of logging has to be done then before those trees, those injured trees, get inundated by get an infestation of these insects in there, and they will cause those trees to die. And then you have a lot more fuel for the fires to come through. So there is lumber logging that has to take place, and it's always a balance. And fire was always part of that natural cycle. But that doesn't mean we can just let the fires burn today, because we've thrown the whole system out of whack from the historic period when Native Americans used fire to manage forest growth, when Mother Nature used fire to manage the forest. These small fires that burn through, that burn the litter on the floor, but it was not nearly as much as what we have now. And into the conflagrations that we are getting now. That didn't happen then in the 16, 17, early 1800s, before the lumber industry took off. And even before that, we're talking millennia prior to that, going back to when this part of the North American continent was recovering from the ice ages of 10,000 plus years ago. So this is something that it's a concern. And my heart goes out to the people of northern Minnesota, southern Ontario. I say southern Ontario. Around here, we think about Windsor, Toronto, that area, but the border area of western Ontario with Minnesota, along the Canoe area. There's hundreds of fires burning in that region too that we don't hear about here in the United States because it's not in our country. But that's where we're seeing a lot of the smoke from here in the last few days, and it will continue. What we need is humid days, no wind, a little bit less heat. I know it's July, so pushing less heat is hard. But rain. We need lots of precipitation. So pray for rain if you're a praying person. Wish with your most positive vibes if you're not. Anybody know a rainmaker? I'm jesting now, but it's the precipitation that's necessary. That's how these fires stop. They can get contained by professional firefighters, by the red card carrying rangers. They're the ones trained to fight wildfires. But to get these fires under control completely and put out is rain coming from the sky, or if it's a late season fire, snow. But doubtful that we're going to see snow in July and August, but in the northern Great Lakes, around Lake Superior, you can't ever say no, that's not going to happen. But so hopefully you learned a little bit about the fires. And for the people of Ely and Winton, Minnesota, anybody listening from there, my heart goes out to you. My best wishes to you all. I hope you all stay safe. And same thing with the people around the border country in Ontario, the Canoe region, and elsewhere where there's fires that are burning. I know there was a small wildfire on Isle Royale National Park in Lake Superior that just started a couple days ago. I don't know the updates on that one. I hope that's been contained. And anywhere else that there are fires that are burning in the Great Lakes region. This is my only podcast episode I'm going to do for a little while here. Just so an update to everybody, I am moving. I am talking to you from my dining room table in my mother's condominium in Chelsea, Michigan, where I've been living for the last almost 5 years. My mom passed away, as I've mentioned, and I am moving to Midland, Michigan. My regular studio in the basement, that's a little bit more sound absorption. You might hear this echoing a little bit because I'm sitting in a rather open area with hard walls here, but everything's packed away of the studio area, and having just boxes and tubs down where my setup usually is. So I will return to doing more once I get settled into my my new apartment in Midland, Michigan, which will be located right near the historic lumber towns of Bay City and Saginaw. So I'll definitely be getting into new lumber history stories. Hopefully I'll have an episode in August, kind of as a preview of my 2026 podcast tour, where last year I did the Upper Peninsula, Wisconsin and Minnesota, and the Boundary Waters was supposed to be talked about during this earlier this season, but with Mom's passing and all, it was postponed. But I hope to be adding an entire series of podcasts from Ontario, because this year's tour will be in September and we'll be going around Ontario. I'll be exploring forest history in different parts of the gigantic province of Ontario, mostly to the north and east of Lake Huron. I'm not getting up north of Lake Superior this time around, but there should be many years of the podcast, and there's many places to explore. So thanks for listening, and I will be talking to you again. Feel free to contact me via my Facebook page, Rob Berg, Environmental Historian. You can find me on Instagram. You can message me through the podcast, and also on my on my YouTube channel. And eventually I will have my own website for this and a Patreon page. But you can also contact me via email, rob.northcountryhistory@gmail.com. And I'll have contacts in my show notes. And unfortunately, there's not going to be a lot of references in there this time because all of my material is already packed away for moving. So thanks for listening, and I will be back again. Bye. North Country History with Rob Berg is hosted, written, and produced by Rob Berg. Music is Crack o' Dawn, performed by Reveille, licensed through Soundstripe. Follow North Country History with Rob Berg on YouTube and on Facebook at Rob Berg, Environmental Historian.